Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks on Twitter, Sheng_Peng, and on Blue Sky, Sheng Peng. I'm joined by my co-host, Keegan McNally. You can find him on Twitter at halfwall_hockey. Once again, that's Keegan McNally at halfwall_hockey. And we're about to do part 2 of our mega mailbag. We did part 1 a couple of days ago. Part 1 focused on how to improve the Sharks' defense this summer. Part 2 today, we'll talk about number 2, the number 2 pick that the Sharks got in the 2025 draft. And what should the Sharks do with that pick? Should they trade up? Should they trade down? Should they keep it? Should they draft Michael Misa? Should they draft Porter Martone? Etc., etc., etc. Also, too, we're going to see, we started this with part 1 of the mailbag. We're going to see if our mailbag is longer than the Return of the King Extended Edition. But before we get to part 2 of the mailbag, let's talk about our sponsor, BringHockeyBack.net. Bring Hockey Back. BringHockeyBack.net. You can find the coolest t-shirts, coolest hockey t-shirts, and you can get custom hockey jerseys of any size order for any occasion. Go to BringHockeyBack.net right now. You can see some really, really neat Sharks t-shirts. Director of Vibes, you probably know that and love that one, right? That's there. You can order that right now. They also have a new Macklin Celebrating t-shirt that is about to come out. Actually, I think I have an order of that coming. I'm not sure. So I was teased a package coming from Bring Hockey Back. So anyway, go to BringHockeyBack.net. Coupon code. We have a coupon code here. San Jose Hockey Now. Get 15% off any of your t-shirt orders. BringHockeyBack.net. Coupon code San Jose Hockey Now. Also, get custom hockey jerseys. And now, mailbag part 2.
Cave. Anyway, while we're doing that, we have an introduction of a new topic, which is called what the fuck are we doing with number 2? That's right. That's the new topic.
Oh, with one side quest question that you guys will find hilarious. I'm actually very excited to hear Keegan's answer for this. But anyway, let's go with the topic. What do we do with the number 2 pick?
What do we do with number 2? So naturally, we're going to start with what would it take to get rid of the number 2 and go to number 1?
They don't call it getting rid of the pick. They say trading up. So.
Trading up. Yeah. What would it take? This is from Jeremy. He's basically saying, the Islanders, they picked first overall and they got John Tavares. Didn't work out. He left. So maybe they want to trade down to number 2
and take Higgins, right? Yeah.
A, it's not going to happen, but B, it's fun to speculate about.
Yeah.
What would it take?
I don't see it happening. I see it more likely. People have suggested maybe the Islanders getting into the top 5 again somehow, maybe too.
Yeah, like 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, maybe 5. Yeah. So anyway, though, good question though. Just a guess though for what it would take, the value of it.
It would take probably the Dallas pick, the Edmonton first round next year, and then
you think that much to move one spot?
It's like it doesn't happen.
I know, but
I think that seems like factor.
Yeah, but you can do an overpayment without trading them 2 first round picks
to be 3 first round picks for 1.
Yeah. So that seems a bit excessive.
I wouldn't do it, but I think that's what it would take.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe it would take less than that. It's really tough to say. But
all right.
It's going to be an overpayment just because it doesn't happen very frequently.
Yeah. No, I agree on that part of it. I'm actually going to have fun and look at the Perry pick value calculator on Puckpedia. Really quickly, just because I'm curious. That don't actually. They have just 1 through 5 average. Oh, pick 1. I can be specific. Okay. Pick 2, pick 1. Okay. So right now in the Perry pick value calculator, pick 2 is worth 73 points, and pick 1 is worth 100 points. So you need to add about 27 points of value to even talk about it.
Okay.
And so let's say that's the Dallas pick, right? And we don't know exactly where they'll be, but let's say that's 28 or 29, I guess, right? Let's say they win this. They beat Winnipeg, and that's not there yet because the 29th pick adds 12 points of value. So maybe you're right. Maybe we got to add the Edmonton pick too. Give
That's
them
another 12
that.
points.
Well, the Edmonton pick is we don't know because it's 2026. So this calculator doesn't account for that. But with the Edmonton pick, though, you're suddenly giving the Islanders the possibility that, hey, what if the Edmonton pick falls into, you don't protect it, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not likely to fall into the top 5, but you never know. And so maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Just from a pure value standpoint, yeah.
Yeah, pure value calculator standpoint, at least. So anyway, check out Puckpedia. Perry, that's Matt Perry, a former director of hockey analytics for the Coyotes. PERRI. So he has a fun value calculator there. But anyway, what would it take though? Okay, so it's some mate. Yeah, so that I think maybe you're right then. Yeah, maybe I was wrong in terms of maybe it would take the 3 picks to do it.
Yeah, and I think that would be dumb, but it would be something. Like, I mean, if you knew they were taking Schaefer, but you don't, so you have to weigh that out too. Like, you don't have a consensus that they are going to take it, so you can also play the odds that they're not. And yeah, it's.
I mean, the pick has. I mean, that number 1 pick has moved before. I think 2003. I believe it moved. So that's a long time ago, though. I don't believe it's moved recently, but I actually haven't looked it up. But it was not 2003. Sorry, the Rick Nash year. So that wasn't 2003. 2002, I think, actually. Yeah. That was the Rick Nash, Jay Bouwmeester year. And okay, so Columbus acquired that pick from Florida. And so basically, Florida. Okay, so Florida had the number 1 pick, and it went to Columbus. Columbus sent the number 3 pick, and actually just the option to swap. I think in 2003 first round picks, the next year. So that doesn't sound like that much, but okay. That's just an example of it, though. So it has moved before, but on draft day, I think that was on draft day. So that was on draft day, but it's not likely though. So, I mean, if we're talking prospects again, let's go up the line. Like, would you trade the number 2 pick and Cagnoni for the Islanders pick? Okay. How about that's for me too. How about the number 2 pick and Musty?
Yes.
Okay. I will just keep going logically. Number 2 pick and Chernishaw. I think I would, but that's me. So
I'm trying to think. Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would be upset about it, but I would do it.
Okay. And then, let's not go higher than that in prospects because you're not.
Yeah, I wouldn't do Dickinson in number 2 or Will Smith in number 2.
Yeah, maybe Dickinson. That'll be the next one you consider. But yeah, I think we did talk about this situation on our live stream of the draft lottery where, you trade Dickinson, you're just you're robbing one hand to pay the other, right? So that doesn't make sense. And then Will Smith, Askarov, those are a little too high up there, maybe. So okay, I think last week you said you wouldn't trade Chernishaw.
I know, but I've
okay.
We've been talking a lot about the structure of the Sharks, and like Schaefer would add a lot to this team.
He would
in a way that you may not have to look back after you do it.
Right.
And now that we lost it, I feel even sadder. So
he is exactly what the Sharks need, right? So.
Yeah. All right, Nick Valderrama has 2 questions. The first one is, who are we going to replace Sheng with on the podcast? Because he asked in the past, who would you replace Keegan with from the Sharks pool?
So good call, Nick.
Yeah, good replacing Sheng.
I'm not hearing this.
No, I have to think about this for a little bit. I have a few. I think
you have a few.
Not that I have a few that
WTF.
I think Joe Thornton would be my guy. Like, I love Joe Thornton. I love him as a player. I think he is such a fun interview.
Yes.
And I think he would have many insights about the game of hockey that It's a kind of a lame answer. It's like, oh, you're picking the best Shark of all time. Yeah, I think I would pick Joe Thornton. He has the hockey wherewithal, the jokiness, the funness to make a really good podcast, I think. Not that he would ever want to do that with his time, but that's what I think I would pick. Or Scott Hannon, because it would be a fun time that way.
He's family. That's what you should have led with. He's family.
Scott Hannon's family. So it's not like Scotty would just have lots of drill down things about defenders all day, which would be fun.
You guys can do a live podcast from the family reunion barbecues. Not that you have them with him, but God, you can start having them with him.
Yeah. I think Mark Smith would be a lot of fun too.
What?
Jason Demers?
No.
There's too many people.
I'm fighting this, all right? No offense to Mark Smith, all right? But that dude, he's got his hair, but I'm not.
He's got the hair?
Right?
I think I'm just picking guys from my childhood that I remember being a lot of fun. John Scott.
JD's pretty funny, but I still would be upset by that.
Demers. Not that I would like. It's not the replacing you thing, Sheng, at all. It's like who would be a cool person.
The sneaky one is Mark Smith, though. That's not what I expected. Like I expected Joe Thornton. I expected Scott Hannon. I expected Jason Demers too. But
yeah, I think I answered Jason Demers last time this happened. Yeah. But John, I think at the end of the day, it would be Joe Thornton if we could pay Joe Thornton's salary, which I don't know what he needs. What does Joe Thornton need? Beard oil.
Care. Yeah, beard care. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the answer, Nick Valderrama. Sheng is never being replaced. It's his podcast, so it is 50% the Sheng podcast.
Space for his roosters. A chicken coop.
Yeah, he needs a chicken coop. He needs some lawn care. Nick Valderrama has a second, more serious question.
So we're back to the number 2 pick. So that was the aside. So
he kickstarts our actual trading down from trading away the number 2 overall pick. What is your favorite hypothetical package for trading the number 2 pick that is still realistic? I think mine is centered around getting Axel Sandin Pellikka, the 13th overall, and other picks from Detroit for
that doesn't seem like enough, though, right? We discussed this, right? So
yeah, I think in other drafts that maybe that makes sense when the 13th overall is a little stronger, but I think 13th overall, you're not getting a guy likely that is going to be as impactful as somebody like Michael Misa.
Mm-hmm.
And ASP is going to help the Sharks prospect pool, but not in the totality that you need it to. Like ASP is a small offensive leaning defender who has a lot of great qualities and is going to help a team's power play. But I don't think that he's going to be a first pairing guy that's going to be in all situations. And that's what the Sharks need.
Yeah. I always trying to get an all situations guy, even if he's not going to be a true blue number 1, but if he's a solid top 4 all situations guy, that's worth it more than a specialist type. Yeah. But anyway, quick sort of digression here. I did get a return answer about Matthias Samuelsson because I was curious about him. So just going to interrupt this a little bit. Or let's save this for the Buffalo portion. So actually, we're going to talk about Buffalo in a little bit. So, but anyway, so Nick Valderrama, a package that's a hypothetical, realistic package for the number 2 pick.
Let's look at the teams that are in that top 10 range here.
I think you need something real back. I mean, real as in like right now. So even though I don't love any of the guys like a Dobson, a Byram, or something like that, right? We had to come back, and
yeah.
What does Buffalo pick?
9.
9.
9's not bad.
Okay.
So 9 can still land you, I think. At least somebody who has some upside to being a top 6 or a top 4.
How about this? You get Byram, the number 9 pick. You have to take on Matthias Samuelsson's garbage contract. Sure. Just to be very clear about what he's making, just so everybody knows. He is signed till 2030, I believe.
Oof.
And he is signed at, the figure isn't that bad. It's just that he's been bad the last couple of years. So he's making $4.285. And yeah, he's a UFA at 2030. He's only 25 too, so he's got that on his side too. So it's hard to figure out what's gone wrong with him because I don't watch him every night. So
yeah, me either. Although I remember them being like he can play hockey and he can play defense. So
yeah. I mean, they loved him, right? They gave him the 7-year freaking contract. So anyway, would you do that for the number 2 pick?
Byram 9.
And then the kick, or the one that the value for Buffalo is getting rid of Samuelson's contract there, and they get the number 2. So
I think that's enough. I think the 9 and 2, or 9 plus Byram, and Samuelson is still probably one of our better defenders.
Yes.
So
yes.
like I'd have to watch more Samuelson to be sure. Like if he's an absolute boat anchor and he's going to suck for 9 years, then no. But they would do that data. So
yeah, that's something you could figure out. Like just what's he, can he pass as your 4th defenseman for a few
exactly
years?
Can he be your number 4 and then Byram be your, in your, you still need a number 1 defenseman.
You would, but Byron would be a good sort of you can build around him with Sam Dickinson and Cagnoni and anybody else that you pick.
Yeah.
And you can still wait for the right number 1 guy to you just have to wait on that. The number 1 guy, obviously, the true number 1 defenseman is just not there. So
and at number 9, you can get guys like Jake O'Brien.
Right. Maybe, or you get a defenseman, right? You can get Smith or Aitchison, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get somebody, or Eklund, even if you wanted to get Eklund.
Yeah, that's a good spot for Eklund. Yeah.
And Eklund's a great player too. So I think it's an interesting proposition. You definitely upgrade your defense by a lot. But it's not like those 2 guys on Buffalo are not making them world beaters. Even
no. I mean, the idea isn't to do that, but it's to make you a lot more competitive next year. This is what you do have to do, I think, for Macklin especially. And then when you add pieces around them, are these guys still going to be good players? Well, Byram should be still a valid part of your top 4 as you become a good team, a playoff team. And the number 9 pick, obviously, you hope it could become something. And you hope that Samuelson is not a disaster. If he is, you buy him out. So
Sam's question is the next one, which kicks off 2 questions about a boy, Porter Martone. Thoughts about a big boy. Thoughts about Martone. I think he would fit well. I think we need some big body type forwards with elite potential. That's the first question about Porter Martone. And then Brad, I'm going to just flash this quickly. Brad Fitzpatrick also had could Porter Martone be the number 2 pick? We've been saying it's going to be Michael Misa, but could this be Porter Martone's slot? I have some thoughts. I don't know if you have any thoughts related to how Grier has answered these questions or not.
No, I'm going to leave it to you, but I would tease, though, that next week we're going to have a fantastic guest.
We are
a big Porter Martone fan. So,
as am I, and I'm super excited to talk with this guest, which we have had on the podcast before that you guys probably know. Going to be a great episode. I'm happy that he's coming back. I'm super excited about that. Anyway, I'm geeking out a little. I didn't think he would come back because last year we had Celebrini, and makes sense that he came. But anyway, I don't think it's unreasonable. That Porter Martone is the pick at 2 rather than Misa. I don't think it's it's probably in the realm of 10-15% chance, something like that. That Grier has set his sights on this guy above Misa.
Yeah, and as I mentioned and wrote about, Mike Grier has been trying to draft the Martone type for the last 3 years.
Yeah, he does this a lot. Yeah, he really likes that kind of player.
Yeah, so Haltonen, Musty, Lund, and Chernyshov, right? The big scoring winger. So, yeah, it's possible, but At least what you hear, at least what I'm hearing from people, just in terms of Misa and just his upside, just hard to pass up on that, even if he isn't your ideal player.
Mhm.
And I think Will Smith is a good example of this, where Will Smith on the surface does not look like an ideal Mike Grier player, but he just was the best player there,
Yeah.
at least for Mike Grier's judgment. And so he didn't go for size with the number 4 pick. Granted, if he had the number 2 pick, he might have gone for size, but he didn't have that choice there, right? So in this case, he does have the choice with Martone, but I still I'm the sort of, at least the thinking that Misa's just overall impact is going to be too great to ignore, and that Misa being, well, I guess we'll probably talk about this in a second, but just um that it's going to be one of those good problems to have. You have too many good centers. So
I would probably be one of the few Sharks fans that would not be upset. I like Martone. For a long time, I had Martone ahead of Misa in my draft order.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be upset. There's something to be said about, like, there's a lot of flaws with Martone, but there's something to be said about that high end, the plays that he makes at speed in front of the net that you see every single night in the NHL playoffs, that you're like, you can connect it. And while Misa put up a shit ton of points and did a great job and has a lot of high end talent, and he does everything really, really well. Like, that's what Misa does. Everything is like above average or more. Martone has like the high end to elite handling. His puck skills are fantastic for a guy that is that size. And a lot of times, yeah, there's warts in Martone's game. Like, he lags, he doesn't always back check effectively. He skating is not as, like, Misa's great skater as well. So it's tough. Like, there's a lot of warts, but the high end plays that you see happen in a split second with Martone that just make you excited more than Misa. And that's what drew me to Martone originally, was like those things. So I wouldn't be upset. I think Misa's the smarter choice because he plays center. He has a very projectable game, but Martone is still a great option.
Right now on the half wall hockey draft board, is Misa number
Misa's
2
ahead.
ahead of, okay.
Yeah, it's Misa then Martone. So it's Schaefer, Misa, Martone.
Okay.
As of right now. But it was at some point Martone as high as 2. So and then Hagens was 2 at some point, but then moved down all the way to 4. So he's 4 now. Then Frondell is 5. So
Okay. You're not as high on the new kid that's kind of bursting up the charts a little bit, the Denois, or
Danaway.
Danaway, sorry about that.
No. I watched 3 games of Danaway last
Yeah.
weekend. I think he's fine. That's my answer. I think he's good. Like, I think he's a good player, but I'm not gonna bet the farm on him. Like, he's a good player, and he will be a good NHLer.
Well, that's a tease for we're gonna do a special draft episode, a Keegan draft episode.
Yeah.
Half wall hockey draft ranking revealed.
I did want to put more into Danaway, but I don't love him as much as other.
Okay.
I think I have him 7th right now. So with the 2 Swedes in between them, so it's Frondell.
Don't give it away. Don't give it all away.
Okay. But that's my ranking. It's not like it's other people have many opinions. I think Danaway was high as 3 on Pronmans and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen him quite high.
And then he moved Martone back up, because would you watch like some games of Martone, it's just like this, oh shit, that's really good feeling. So anyway, that's my Martone thoughts.
Okay.
Austin Diaz says, how interested are teams in the number 2 overall pick?
Okay.
What are the realistic chances?
I don't know if we've heard too much about the buzz with it, but it's a little early. But I would say that the number 2 pick, a guy like a prospect like a Misa, there's going to be interest in it for sure. And with the Sharks perceived as maybe not needing a center as much, right? I'm sure that they're already getting good offers for it, and will keep getting it until the draft. Now, will it be good enough to move it? I don't know. But yeah, I would think this is a pick that there's a lot of interest in. This isn't the Dallas pick.
Yeah. Especially in this draft, I think there's a range from like 2 to 5 that have very similar upside, maybe.
Right. But then if you get 2, you get your choice of those guys, right? If you assume Schaefer is the class of this draft, which isn't even necessarily
true
concrete, he's not. Schaefer isn't quite a Celebrini-like prospect. And actually, to tease, we're going to talk about a similar past instance of a defenseman that I think everyone thought was going to be number 1, who fell in the draft, which might remind you of might be a Matthews Schaefer situation, which maybe the Sharks hope for that. So that's something that we're going to talk with our guests too, this or next week. But anyway, though, yeah. So I would think there's a lot of interest in it though, because it's the catbird position for maybe the next layer of the draft if you subscribe to Schaefer being number 1.
All right, Ben, we're getting there.
Yep.
They're already fully into the Battle of Minas Tirith right now.
Oh my God, we're like halfway. We still got a lot of questions to go.
Like they are fighting. They're bringing in the Wolf's Head to try and knock down.
I think we might be halfway into our questions.
We're getting there. Ben says, "What does the package look like that might tempt Grier to trade down?"
Right. I mean, just generally, right? We can guess, right? And actually, does Matt Harrison have a similar question coming up? Should we kind of put them together or no? I'm just looking at it. Looking at the blurb. So.
No, his is a little
it's different. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, the kind of package though, I think is you need a defenseman that can play now, but you need somebody who is young, right? So you're not trading the number 2 pick for Chris Letang or something like that.
Yeah.
So you need somebody in the Byram age is right, even if he's not the right guy. But I think the age is right, and so you need a centerpiece like that, and so basically a guaranteed top 4 defenseman that you can grow with for the next decade. So it has to be like I think under 25 or around that, basically. And that would be the centerpiece of it. And there might be some other stuff too. Like, maybe it's a late first, maybe it's this or that. But I think for him to trade down, I think that's where it starts because the Sharks don't necessarily need a number 1 centerman in the future or number 2 centerman in the future. They don't need a number 1 goalie. I guess they could use if there were a guy out there available that can fit the big strapping power forward, nasty, got a little bit of that, right? Like, if suddenly you go back in time and Matthew Tkachuk was willing to come to the Sharks, which I don't know why he would, but like that's the kind of guy. Okay, then that's the kind of guy that we know that Mike Grier craves, and a lot of other teams in the league, obviously too. But so maybe one of those 2 kind of players, though, that power winger type, that's or that all around top 4 defensive type that is already established as that, not a hope guy. So established power winger type, established top 4 defenseman who is about 23, 24, 25.
Yeah, you need the plus has got to fit with the Shark system. And it's tough in this scenario because you're still going to want a high pick. So you have to like somehow Nashville has to move from 5 to 2. That doesn't make sense. Or Boston has to move from 7 to 2. Seattle maybe. But
I think you can live without the high pick. Let's say the deal. Okay, I'm gonna use Buffalo as an example. Let's say it's Byram. Byram's straight up for the number 2 pick. I don't think you do that if you're the Sharks. So let's say Buffalo's want to give you Byram and something good. Maybe not the number 9 pick, but something good with Byram, right? Not Samuelson's contract, huh?
Zach Benson, excellent.
Maybe because he hasn't been the most productive player, but maybe that's a guy, or maybe like. They don't think they can sign Paterka. So, right. And then maybe you had to give back, like maybe you had to give him the Dallas pick too, to make it, but something like that though. Right. Yeah. And so you don't need to pick back. I guess that's the thing I would say, that obviously the Sharks need everything kind of, but they don't really need to make this pick number 2 if it's not Matthew Schaefer in my mind. Like they could trade out of it and not make a top 10 pick this year, and that's fine.
They just have to make the value worth it.
Right. You just need to get the value back. I'm not advocating the Sharks to trade the number 2 pick for Sidney Crosby or something like that. Guy who's going to be retired in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, but you make the right trade for the right guy, right guys.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Matt Harrison has a similar one, but it's more if we're saying that the number 2 pick is off the table, we're not going to trade it. Are we going to trade any of Eklund, Musty, or Chernisov to get our defenseman of the future?
Actually, we do have a similar question like this later, but yeah, I think that I'm going to answer more about Eklund a little later, but I would have to think that Chernisov and Musty
are on the table.
They're not untouchable.
Yeah.
Right. And I did want to say with Musty, one thing that I saw in his playoff game, I want to give him credit for, because I think I've been hard on Musty at times on the podcast. Excuse me. But I talked with Quentin in LA. The series he didn't play against Ontario Reign, and he said one of the things that he was working on was trying to take the puck off of people, not kind of like getting into people physically. And I think that was something I saw in his first couple regular season games. I didn't really write about because, again, I didn't want to be too micro on a 19-year-old guy. But I did think that Chernisov was more inside on guys. That's why I thought the initial viewings that I thought Chernisov would be more pro ready, because there's a little more of that jam there. That kind of game that, like, if he's not scoring, he can still use him on a third and fourth line. And that may still be the case on a nightly basis. You know, Musty did it. So I saw Musty do that against Ontario. I'm sorry, against Colorado in that playoff game that the Barracuda won. So I want to give him credit for that. That seemed like he applied something that he's been working hard on, that they told him he's got to improve, and he applied it immediately. I think that is a good sign. And so, of course, the trick is to do it for more than just one game. You got to do it every night. That's how you become a consistent pro in the league. But I want to give him credit for that, though. That's a little bit of a side.
Yeah, it's got to be more consistent.
Yeah.
It's also, the next one is about Musty for a D prospect from Astoverpix. They have a very deep forward group of U23 players. Do you
so
think
it's just straightforward, right? Yeah, Musty for Nemec, Wielander, or Sandin Pellikka. So we're kind of going down the line of, we've talked about Dobson, we talked about Nemec and Clark, so now we're moving down the line. So would you trade Musty straight up for any of these guys?
I mean, I would, but I don't think they would.
Other side wouldn't? Okay.
Yeah. I think Detroit, maybe they would move ASP, but they
would?
Maybe. But they have Sider, who's their number one defenseman. So
they got Edvinsson too, right?
I think they would keep ASP and hope that that's the answer for
more than Edvinsson. He says he moved ahead of Edvinsson. You think?
No. I think Edvinsson's ahead, but I mean, offensively, to try and spark this team.
Oh, I see. Okay. So then maybe Nemec is the most likely, just because of the glut that they have. He might be the. So would you do, like, let's say Musty and a second round pick?
Yeah.
Or Nemec. Okay.
Yeah. I think, I like Musty. Musty's going to be good, but one of these deep prospects, if we can somehow swing that trade, I think that's the one that.
How about Nemec and the Dallas first? Is that too much?
Dallas first and Musty?
For Nemec, so it's not as exciting a player at this point, but.
With how much capital they have, I don't hate it. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, like I like to say, though, the Sharks can just go the way of the Maple Leafs and just go forward heavy. It works, right? The Maple Leafs have proven that works.
Okay. We have more number 2 overall. This is going to keep going on for a couple more questions at least.
A couple more, so okay. But this one is a very specific one, so this one I haven't even thought about yet. So
Dylan Smallwood. Says, first off, this better be a 4-hour mailbag. It might be. We're getting close. We're 2 hours, 17 minutes in. Says, to the New York Islanders, would you trade the second overall, the second round pick, a B-level prospect, and Dellandrea for the Sharks getting Noah Dobson with an extension for 8 years?
Okay.
Pierre Engvall, who's kind
that's
of
a cap dump.
Yeah. Colorado's first.
Okay.
And then a B or C level prospect.
Colorado's first is this year's first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so.
Let me look up Engvall's contract. You want to make sure on the Colorado pick? Yeah, let's make sure we
so New York, let's see. Yeah, that's next year's 2026.
Okay. Oh, it's 2026 pick. Okay, that's a little more interesting.
Interesting.
Is there any protections to it?
Colorado has the option to defer to the pick of 2027, is what it says.
Okay. Then that's it?
That's it. That's all it says. I don't know what that means, but they have the option to defer.
Well, if they defer it, that means that it becomes unprotected for 2027, basically.
Yeah.
So, usually that's what, unless there's other extra conditions, that's what it means. Okay. Engvall is signed, by the way, till 2030 for $3 million AAV. So obviously don't like the term, but $3 million is,
I think he was waived this year.
He was waived this year, and no one picked him up, including the Sharks.
So not great. God, that's a long time contract to have on your books.
Yeah, 2030. I mean, it's not great, but
you could do it, I guess.
So, well, let's take away the filler stuff. So, okay, so Engvall is just the captain. Dellandrea is just whatever in this trade. Second round pick is okay. So, you're trading the second overall for no Dobson and Colorado's first next year or 2027. Huh. I'm not convinced of Dobson being your linchpin guy for 8 years. I like Dobson as a player, but he's not a guy that solves your defensive problems for the next. He again is, I think, on a good team, he becomes your number 2, which is fine. But I would still rather have potential number 1 center fill-in Misa. If Celebrini is hurt, or you want to put one on the wing, you can do a lot with that, with having 2 number 1 centers and loading it up at times, like Edmonton does with Draisaitl, McDavid, or Malkin and Crosby, or whatever examples you want to bring back from the past. Just center is so valuable. So I don't mind that if the Sharks end up, of course, I'd rather have Schaefer than Misa, but if you end up with Misa, this is not a bad problem. Like, if the Sharks ended up at number 3, I'm not sure if I like Martone as much as Keegan does. So then you think more about a trade if you're me. But for me to trade the number 2, though, that could be a really good package back of just kind of. And yeah, I actually like Byram more than Dobson, I think, too. So to add to that, too, because I think Byram's a little more all around, which I value more than a kind of a offensive leaning guy. So
I think I'd say no.
Okay, I think about it though. This is not like an awful package. Like,
it's very well thought out.
Yeah, you can live with the Engvall, the contract, the prospects you can balance out, or you can turn that San Jose gets a BC level prospect. You can try to get a better prospect maybe from the Islanders. I do like the Colorado pick being 2026 though, or maybe even bleeding to 2027 because you never know what's going to happen. So a disaster happens, suddenly that 2027 pick is like a top 5 pick out of nowhere, and that's a nice lottery pick to kind of nice lottery ticket to kind of buy there. But I would say probably not still, because I still would like the number 2 pick to go for a linchpin kind of player. Like, even that proposal I just did, number 2 and taking back Samuelson's contract and Byram at a number 9. I don't love that proposal, by the way. I'm not advocating for it. It's just a thought that I had that sort of in terms of value and helping Buffalo out with the bad contract. Actually, it's a lot of the same thinking of Dylan's proposal here. the framework has some similarities. So
yeah. All right, a couple more questions related to the number 2 overall pick.
Oh, here's the Buffalo thing.
Here's the Buffalo thing. Trade number 2 for Power, Dahlin, or Byram. They're not going to do it for Dahlin, so that's number 1.
Yeah, let's take that off the table. That's not going to happen.
Remove that. I'd do it for Owen Power.
Right. And so why do you like Power more than Byram?
I think Byram, the inconsistencies have been prevalent. It's also injury concerns.
Sure, I think that's real. Yeah.
And Power has been more, he's 22. He's been up and down in the league, but like it's still hard to be 22 and putting up like 40 points a year and playing 22 minutes a night and being a number 1 overall pick. So like he's been the guy that 10 years from now is still going to be playing probably on a contending team's top pair. I don't know if he's going to be the number 1, but he's going to be on their top pair for a long time. Whereas Byram has some components that are like super high end, but there's a lot of risk with his profile. So I like Power a little bit more. And he's also signed. He's under contract for a long time to a good value. That I would say that's just like an easy, we're going to upgrade our defense pretty significantly and go from there. That I would take it more.
Yeah, for me, this is more like, I think on the surface, Power is the obvious pick. He was the number 1 pick. He signed, like you mentioned, like I think he's like 8.5, which is not a terrible figure for a number 1 or 2 defenseman. So I think that he's also kind of like the bigger, more exciting name. He's a little bit younger than Byram, but the reason why I go with Byram is just things that I talked with the NHL coach and just talking about different players and what they've heard about different players. And I will preface this by saying that this is not Buffalo's coach or Buffalo's assistant coaches or whatever, right? But I will also say that this is a person that has been an NHL coach that is connected, and people talk about players, right? And his impression is that Byram is the one you pick for sure, just in terms of the room stuff and just the overall, just anything that you can point to in terms of. I think the 2 things that stood out from what I talked to them was just, and there weren't specifics given, so I know that's why I hesitate to say too much about it, because I'm not trying to say that Owen Power is a bad room guy, because I don't know this, right? And this is not even what this guy told me. But this coach told me that, if I were to pick a guy, it would definitely be Byram, though. And just his impression, let's just say his impression of a guy that you want to build around more. And so that was good enough for me. So to go with Byram, and just my impressions of Byram's game is that it is more all around. It is more flexible. It is a guy, he has won a Stanley Cup, so he's seen that part of it, right? Even if he wasn't a number 1 defenseman on that Avalanche team that won a Stanley Cup. And so I feel like those kind of components, like I like to bet that this is a guy. The big concern for me is the injury stuff. So that would be the one that maybe I don't make this trade. But besides that, though, in terms of as a leader in the room, off the ice, that Byram is the one that I'm hearing a little more positive stuff on. And for me, that is really important. If you're going to invest 8 years in a guy, that you're investing in the right guy, right? That's always the question. If you're going to invest that long in somebody, be it Mitch Marner or anybody you can think of, it's got to be the right guy.
All right. We're out of...
Actually, sorry. I did promise I was going to talk about Samuelson too a little bit too before we get out of the Buffalo portion of this. So just really quickly. He really has struggled the last couple of years is what this scout says. And definitely didn't become the player that Buffalo thought he would become when Buffalo signed him to a 7 years, $30 million contract at a really young age. He is just 25. And so obviously Buffalo, I think, would love to move a guy like that, right? And so that's something that I can't say because I don't watch him enough. But like, if you're the Sharks, right, or a Sharks fan, you have to imagine like let's say the Sharks signed Mario Ferraro to a 7-year, $30 million contract a couple of years ago, which actually doesn't sound that inconceivable, right? In terms of just how much the Sharks love Ferraro and like whatever, right? And then he struggled a bit, but do you believe in the guy? Do you believe that he could turn it around? Right. So I would say if Mario Ferraro had the same kind of like contract with the Sharks, and it wasn't another team looking at him. The thing I could say for Mario at least is that is he ever going to be as good a player as his contract? Maybe not. But there is not a question of how hard he's going to try. That he can help you still if you use him right defensively. That he brings a lot to the table still, even if it's not 3-4 million worth, right? And so if you check out Samuelsson, that's what you get back. That hey, this guy still has those intangibles that you talk about, those winning traits, right? Then that might be a gamble worth taking. So if he doesn't, if he got his contract and now he's living fat off of it, which I would not say off of out of a Ferraro type. Ferraro is a guy that is going to try to make the most out of whatever he's signed to, even if he is not capable of doing it physically for whatever reason. But so that's what I would check with the Samuelsson. So again, if you can make a commitment to the guy, is this guy a fit? Is this guy what you want? Granted, with a guy like Samuelsson, you can probably stomach a buyout, but because his per year total isn't as much. But anyway,
we gotta get moving. We are at the part where Frodo just gets wrapped up by Sheilov in the thing, and Sam is hugging Frodo, who is covered in the web. So
he's about to get to Mount Doom, so right? He's inside Mount Doom, right? Isn't that he's actually inside Mount?
He's
Doom,
in like the cave before.
The
passageway, whatever that's called.
Okay.
All right, Arch McKell says, "What's the plan for Sam Dickinson?"
Oh, you skipped David's question.
Did I? Oh, shit, I did. You're right, David. Apologize.
Yes.
Basically, are there going to be any changes to the Sharks jersey?
We can get this one really fast, so that's the good news here. And
or should the Sharks go back to using their original logo?
That's not happening. The Sharks are so invested in this new logo.
Yeah,
it'll take a regime change of some sort. So it'll be, if it ever did happen, it'll be a while from now. But anyway, though, I did ask the question about any changes to the Sharks jerseys next year, and so I do have official word. I asked Doug Bentz, he's the head of marketing for the Sharks. And he says, and I quote, he said it was cool if I quote him here. We won't be changing any of the existing jerseys next season. So that answers the question, right? That's pretty clear cut. Does that mean for the year after that? Who knows, right? But one aside I would add to it, just to add really quickly, is that there is a rule that David alludes to that if you debut a new jersey, you're required to use it for 3 years before you think about changing it. So next year will be year 3 of 3 for Califin. And actually, we're already at 3 of 3 for the teal, the new jerseys that they debuted in, I think it was 2022 or anyway. So yeah, 2022-23. So maybe if you take Doug's statement there, like not this coming year, but maybe 26-27, we'll see. But anyway, got your question answered from the highest source possible from the Sharks, or the highest source marketing kind of jersey related source. So.
Easy peasy.
So
Arch McKell says, "What's the plan for Sam Dickinson? What are we doing? Are we sending him back to the OHL? Is he going to play in the NHL? Is he going to get like 9 games then go back? It's really early to say. I think he might get 9 games to go back. That would be a yes for me. I think he's got some growth to do, but maybe they think that he has enough raw skill to at least survive for a little while and then see. So that's my guess.
Yeah. In terms of the plan, that's a very internal question. That's something that I'll have to check up on throughout the summer. Honestly, it's a little early to be I think to be digging too hard on that. We'll try to get we've had him for the last couple of summers, so I think we'll try to get Todd Marchand back on the show too. So that's something that we can maybe ask him about. But if you're gonna ask me just like a likelihood or prediction for it, One thing I would say is that will go contrary to what I've said before is that I didn't know if Dickinson would be ready for the 9 game just because he's the defense. Maybe you don't want to expose him to it, but maybe there's an argument to at least give a change of pace on the OHL season to give him 9 games. It doesn't have to be 9 in a row. You can keep him around for like a month and a half. You can play him like half of the games, right? Just the exposure, practice, just take it all in with the plan of telling him like, look, we are not keeping you unless like, of course, like you go bonkers, but maybe even say it before. Don't even put that out there. Like just tell him like, we're not keeping you. That's not the plan. But the plan is for you to be in the NHL for 2 months. It's kind of like a compressed form of what they did with Will Smith, but with more scratches and just more about like, we want you to be here. We want you to see what Mario Ferraro is doing and pros like that. See what they're doing. And don't put too much pressure on yourself. We're not expecting you to carry us out of the cellar. You're going to play probably bottom pairing minutes, some power play, and work up from there. And it's more about the experience for him. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe like that. Teams don't really do that, huh? But why not though, right? I think one of the things that this is a little bit of a side, but one of the things that we've seen with the Will Smith plan, the Leo Carlson plan, is that maybe teams are going to get a little more creative with their plans for these players. You know, in the old days, there's just like, are you good enough? Is there a chance that in these 9 games you're going to be good enough to stay? Was sort of always the looming thing, right? And instead of that, just be like, hey, we're going to have you for a couple months here. You're going to get scratched. It's not because of your play. It's just we want you to be here for a couple of months and just see what it's about before we send you back.
We have 2 questions about a specific UFA, but if you wanted to be updated on the movie, the armies of Rohan have just approached the battlefield near Minas Tirith. So
okay,
it's about to get nuts.
It's a little... Gandalf's come riding in.
No, so not Gandalf in that's the 2 towers. See, it's a different movie.
Oh, okay. I thought Gandalf comes back in okay, well, whatever.
So Gandalf is in Minas Tirith getting bombarded the whole movie.
Oh, okay. That's right. Okay. This is like when he's up there and he's gonna show up the Steward of Gondor, right? He's gonna
I don't think the Steward has died yet, but it's gonna happen.
Not yet.
And then so this is the armies of Rohan who have marched and they're gonna fight.
This is the part of the movie where things are looking dire, though.
Very dire.
For the Fellowship.
Oh yeah, super dire for all
for mankind.
Mankind in Middle Earth. So Beast and Lincoln Race want to talk to us about offering Mitch Marner $19.1 million for 2 years.
Which is the max, 20% of the salary cap, which is $95.5 million next year.
And then, I don't know, vibes happen after that, and then maybe he stays, maybe he doesn't, maybe we trade him, but just that for some reason, Mitch Marner is going to take a 2-year contract, even if it's at $19 million. I think my biggest concern with this is that the math of $38.2 million and the math of like $80 million do not add up. So even if, like, say you sign Mitch Marner to 2 years and you give him $19 million, the other option is that he signs like a 7 or 8 year deal for $80+ million.
Well, I think even more than that. I think like Toronto, and with the cap rising, like I think we're talking like 8 years, 120 maybe even.
A fuck ton of money. So why is he signing a 2-year deal in the first place? Because this is guaranteed. The NHL has guaranteed contract money. There's no way that you get these big names to even sign for that max amount, even if it's more money right now, in the hope that they're going to sign again later on. It just doesn't happen because, like, I would 100% take $110 million over 8 years than, $38 million over 2.
And in these proposals, defense though, I propose something not that dissimilar with Brady Shea last year, but the difference between Brady Shea, what did he ultimately get from Nashville? Like 7 years, like $50 million or something like that.
Probably close to that, yeah.
And so the difference wasn't as high. I was talking like 2 years, $20 million. So
like there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the amount of money.
This is like basically $40 million versus $120 million, or versus so there is that difference.
So much
But
money.
yeah, not seeing. I mean, you can offer it all you want, but I'm not against it either because the Sharks do have cap space, and Marner does make you instantly better. Even if I don't know if he's the right guy that you want to give 8 years to or 7 years to, but he will make you instantly better. But it just doesn't really make sense for Mitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't think it makes sense for him. And like maybe it helps the Sharks, but it doesn't make sense otherwise. So that's Lincoln Race and Beast's questions. But I do think maybe we explore Mitch Marner more in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, call his agent. I mean, what's it hurt, right? But Mitch is also adding to his value too with a good playoffs, which he hasn't necessarily had in the past. And so that's going to be another thing too, where if Toronto had been flamed down in the first round again, then maybe he is going to leave and he is going to be creative in what he's looking for because he's going to leave no matter what. And so, but in this case, though, if Toronto goes far with him, and maybe even though he was in trade rumors this past trade deadline, that maybe that will kind of calm things down or cheer things up for both sides, Toronto and Marner, and so they'll come to a deal relatively quickly. I don't know, but
All right, Boomer. Question for Sheng: did you grow up a Sharks fan?
So I know I answered this a lot, so I'll give a little more to this though, so you guys have something new to this question. So yes, yes, I did. No, I did not grow up a Sharks fan. Sorry, we've been talking for well into Return of the King Extended Edition.
Oh yeah,
But but anyway, I did not grow up a Sharks fan. I grew up a Kings fan, as many of you know. Wayne Gretzky got me into it. The Kings traded for Wayne Gretzky when I was a kid, when I was 6, and hadn't heard of hockey, and that got me into hockey. And I did want to add a couple of things to this though that people may not know, that when I got into sports writing, and I've told actually a few people have asked me for career advice, and I do tell them this. So it's not like I never said this to anybody, but when I got into sports writing, my dream was to cover the Kings. That makes sense, right? I mean, that's anybody in this job, their dream is to cover the team that they grew up covering. But the Kings wouldn't let me into their press box for a couple of, I don't want to get into the reason, it'll be too long. So we can talk about that over a drink one day. But not through my fault though. I'll be clear about that. I did good work when I was covering the Kings, and I deserve to be up there, but they wouldn't let me in. So at that point, I decided I had to move on with my life and my career. And so that's how I ended up in Vegas, which some of you know that I covered the Golden Knights for a year, their expansion year. And that was because at that point in my career, I couldn't wait for one team to let me in. And that's advice I tell every young writer that comes to me. They're often Sharks fans and they want to cover the Sharks, but they've also been fans of other teams. And I say you've got to expand your horizons. You can't just expect to cover the one team that you grew up, even the one sport necessarily that you grew up loving. You need to be open-minded to other teams, even other sports. And if you're good at those other teams and other sports, you can always return to the team that you love if you want. And so that might lead you to think like, oh, Sheng is going to go cover the Kings again one day. And I'll say it's not likely. The Kings actually reached out to me a few years later, and they wanted me to not to work for them, because that's a different proposal, because you might make more money that way. So then I had to think about that. But they wanted me to open a site and to cover the Kings. And they would let me in their press box and whatever. Right? This was a couple of years ago. And I said no, because I was essentially tired of moving. And I like to think that the relationship, the rapport that we have, you and I have, and you guys know, most of you guys know that I'm not a Sharks fan, but it's okay though, because I think along with that comes a degree of objectivity. And I'm the one telling you, hey, don't pencil in Sasha Chemleski into your second line for the next decade. And I am very I need to say I'm not proud is not the right word, but like I know that that's been my role, I guess, in Sharks media, that like I have people I can talk to who tell me this guy is not it. And the Sharks may be telling you one thing, but I can tell you that yeah, I talk to somebody that I trust, and don't put all your don't put all your stock into this prospect. So I think that's a very important role to have in media. So anyway, the other thing I would add to that too, just I guess since we're going to talk about the Kings, the fandom, right, is, and I don't know if I've said this story on the podcast, but I know I've told this people the story before too, is that the first time it really was tested when I was covering the Golden Knights was Golden Knights and the Kings play each other in the first round. And to keep the story simple and short, I stopped being a Kings fan in that series because I realized that I was more of a fan of myself and my career than the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're covering the Golden Knights, the Kings, right? The Kings destroy the Golden Knights. What kind of is that good for my career? No, it's not, right? Because I don't get to cover the wonderful playoff run that I cover with the Golden Knights. That's how a lot of people got to know me nationally from my coverage of the Golden Knights on that playoff run and making Gerard Gallant mad and things like that. So anyway, people wonder, how can you not be a Kings fan anymore? Oh my God, I can't believe it. And I get that fandom thing, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening to this would never drop being a Sharks fan, or you tell yourself that. But for me, it was a question of me or the Kings. And I chose me. To quote Ivan Drago, I choose me.
You choose you. Okay. Juan Ribolo says, did the Sharks pick for need in 2026? So if we picked like a forward this year because we don't get Schaefer, do we pick a defenseman next year? Depends on where we land, I guess, because there are some good defenders like Xavier Villeneuve. I can't ever say his name. And Keaton Verhoff. But it's the same thing with this year. Like we were like, oh, maybe we can get Schaefer, and then we didn't. So they're just gonna pick BPA. Like if it's not one of the guys, like not one of the defenders, they're just gonna pick the best player available. If they're this high, if they're in like the 2, 3, 4 range, 1, 2, 3, 4. If they're like 7 through 12, they might swing for a defender instead. That might be lower on the lists. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm all about BPA, so
I agree with that.
Yeah, like if anyone asks me when you start to pick for need, like, I mean, never, I think, because if you get BPA, you can always trade BPA for need, maybe. I think the only case is, I mean, you've heard some scouting people talk about this before, that if players are all things being equal, then maybe that position is a tiebreaker. But yeah, that's my philosophy. I don't know Mike's philosophy, but
Zeke has 2 questions.
Mm.
How can you tell if Mike Grier is excited?
That's a good one.
The first one. That's a good one.
So watch the 2024 draft lottery post draft lottery media session versus the 2025 post draft lottery media session. You'll see a couple of smiles from Mike in 2024 that I don't think are as consistent and regular in 2025. I think that's how you can tell. But it is a funny question though. Mike is a guy that he likes to joke around, but yeah, there's not too much of that you see on camera. So it does remind me of, and I don't want to go through this whole story because I told the story earlier to Keegan. It was terrible. But just go watch the movie Black Dynamite. I love that movie from 2009. And just go watch the scene where Black Diamond says, "I am smiling." And so if you know that movie, or you can just look up Black Dynamite, "I am smiling," and you'll see that's kind of a little Mike Grier there. That's a little Mike Grier there. So
his second question was, are we going to trade for Wall or Stellars from the Toronto Maple Leafs, which seems to be a little bit of current news, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we both had the question of why is Toronto trading one of these 2 goaltenders?
Right, yeah, because they're both signed next year to combine 6.1 million, and they are outperforming or performing to that.
Yeah.
So that's how you keep your team loaded up with forwards with Marner and Matthews and Nylander. because in other positions you need to be efficient with it, right? And they needed to outperform the cap figure, which those guys in tandem have. So yeah, so I'm not seeing it. I guess the only reason why Toronto might want to move on from one of these guys is they have Hildeby down there, who's a pretty good prospect. I'm not sure if he's waiver exempt next year. I think that's a good question. Good question. If he is waiver exempt, then they might be forced to make a decision on him. So I'm gonna look at that. Actually, I'm actually curious. That is a legitimate question, I think, for Hildeby. I don't. This year he is waiver exempt. I think next year he's going to be too. Yeah. They have a calculator there for it. So next year Hildeby is still going to be waiver exempt. So they can still hide him in the AHL. So I'm not seeing any reason for Toronto to move on from one of these guys, unless you give him a stupid offer. But why would you do that? So for Joseph Wool or Anthony Stolars, right? So.
Sweet Shark asks, what about Victor Eklund for the Sharks? How likely is it the Sharks draft Victor Eklund, who's going to be projected in this kind of 6 to 12 range for the draft? I'd say not likely.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not seeing it.
I like Victor Eklund a lot. I think he would help the Sharks, and it's a cool story. It's just not the right year. If the Sharks landed in that 7 to 10 spot, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's a solid possibility. He's not like his brother in terms of his brother is, the gecko, the like silky, the move around, don't get hit guy. Like Victor Eklund likes to hit and likes to battle a little bit more than his brother did at the same age.
What's his size though? He's a smaller guy though, right? I think he's just slightly bigger.
Yeah, so. Similar size to his brother, maybe tiny bit bigger, a little bit more built at the same age. Definitely more built at the same age, but and a little bit more of a shooter rather than like the playmaker that his brother was. So good player though. It's just not in the Sharks' range, I think.
Yeah, I think next year with the Sharks, you're hoping that that's the range that they're in, that they have a chance at McKenna if things fall right, but more likely they end up with 7, 8, whatever. So
yeah, and if the Sharks were there, we'd all be like, "Well, that's a cool story. Yeah, go grab him. He's a good player, regardless." So Joseph said, "How hard is it going to be to fill the holes on the Sharks roster through free agency?"
I think this is actually really similar to the next question too. If you want to, because my answer is going to be similar to both.
And T. Graveline kind of asked, like, how chaotic is this offseason going to be with some teams needing to retool, like Boston and maybe Nashville and LA and stuff like that.
I look at that and I see T. Graveline, but you're probably right. Probably is
what did I say?
He said T. Graveline. You're probably right. Anyway, though, so to answer both your guys' questions. The reason why I bucket these together, I don't know what you think, but I actually disagree with something that you've been saying, Keegan, about how the league is going to move from being less cap conscious to being like
asset focused. Sure.
I think that this transition the next couple of years to a much larger cap, 95.5 next year, I think projected, 102, like projected in I'm actually curious. Want to make sure I give right projections here. 104 in 2026-27 and 113.5 the next year, right? Very quickly, teams are going to catch up, and they're basically going to spend stupidly, I think, this offseason.
Probably.
That's my prediction. And so you think you have a surplus of space. By this time next year, we're going to be talking about the same things. The teams want to get rid of contracts, being willing to tack on high picks or relatively high picks to get. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. So, but anytime teams have had a chance to spend stupidly, in general, they do. So I think that's my historical precedent for this, and I think it's mostly accurate. So I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be this crazy competition for players, and then suddenly Gavrikov is going to come out with like $8 million per year for $7 million. Like, what the hell?
It's very possible for sure.
And that's why I think a Marner he's gonna break records because he's just the best guy out there, and he's gonna get if he becomes a free agent or if Toronto signs him, he's gonna be, you're gonna look at, oh hey, 15 million, it breaks a record, or 16 million, whatever it is, it's gonna break a record. But in 2027, 28, when the cap is, that's how teams think. When in 2027, 28, when the cap is 113 million, you can stomach Marner at 17 million per year or something like that. So I think that basically there'll be so much money spent that like within like next summer, like I said, I would predict that there's not going to be a ton of space anymore. So to answer the exact questions from Joseph, how hard will it be? I think it'll be hard because teams are going to be basically, in my mind, and again, I could be wrong, so remind me of this if I'm wrong, but I feel like teams are just going to be outdoing each other to spend stupidly.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's going to be, there's not a lot of assets and a lot of space, so we're going to get who is it, David Clarkson that got
there's a lot of space, but there's not a lot of assets.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Did I say the opposite? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said there was neither or both. So
yeah,
there's a lot of space right now.
A lot of space, not a lot of assets.
There's not a lot of assets. So that means that I think we're going to see some really stupid money for
probably
the top defensemen, Ekblad, Gavrikov, for Marner, for Ehlers. So that's where like you got to find your bargains. And not bargains, but the guys, this is where
smart money,
where I might wag my finger this time July 1st and be like, hey, maybe we should have just re-signed Mikhail Granlund back in February. So, but maybe I'm wrong. So we'll see. But that's my prediction that when teams have a chance to spend like drunken sailors, bet on them to do it.
Quick update: the King of Rohan is dead.
Oh
no! He has died. He's been crushed to death by.
Wait! Has his daughter stepped up yet, though?
Yes, she did the whole like stab in.
Yeah.
And say, I am no
man. Man can kill me.
Yes.
I am no man.
Yeah, she did that. She stabbed him through the helmet.
Okay, nice.
And now she's crying over his dead body.
Okay.
So that's where we are. So we gotta pick it up because we're getting there.
Did the Ghost Pirates join the fight yet? Because didn't they turn the tide in that fight?
Oh, I don't.
Or is that a different?
I think they did. Yeah. They did. They joined the fight.
Okay.
They're wandering through the battlefield now and trying to pick up the pieces.
Has Aragon not released them from their vow yet? Okay, so
he stepped from the vow.
All right, go on. Keep it moving, Aragon. Keep it moving.
We still have an hour and a half, maybe. Oh, I don't want to spoil how long we have left.
Well, you just did.
Yeah. All right. Chris also asked, do we have like an idea of what the roster construction is going to be for next year for the Sharks?
Hey, we're near the end though. I think we're in the final 10 questions.
We got like 15 questions, 10 questions.
Oh, okay, maybe 15. Sorry.
We're getting
this there. Really is like Return of the King. I thought we were at the end. I thought we were at the end, but we're not. There's 4 more scenes to go. This, by the way, breaks the record from last time for number of questions.
It does.
So by 1, I think you said, right? So. But anyway, to answer Chris's question, the way that I'm going to try to answer this, the way that makes sense to me is, Chris, you also asked about the Barracuda, but Barracuda are so hard. There's so much movement in AHL that you really have no idea. Like you have a guy like Podorowski signed, but he might leave. And the Sharks might have to let him go just because they've got to be good guys. Like if KHL says, hey, we'll give you $1.5 million, and your guy asks you, will you release me from my contract? Well, you've got to, just like the Ghost Pirates and the Return of the King. But anyway, though, so the way that I'm going to try to answer this question is kind of in terms of more like what the Sharks really need on their roster, kind of. And I know that it may be obvious answers, but that's maybe the best way to look at it in terms of like, okay, the Sharks aren't in the market for a 1C because they've got a future one already, right? The Sharks are not in the market for a starting goalie because they've got a future one already, very close, NHL ready guys. So then we're talking about, okay, well, they've got to fill their defense and they have no right now legitimate playoff caliber top 4 defensemen. You might talk yourself into next year, Mukhamadullin and Ferraro can be your second pairing, which is fine. But then that means you need to find a passable top pairing. just to pass the time. It's a bridge top pairing. You're not necessarily going to find your answer for number 1, number 2 defenseman for next year. Maybe you will find it if you trade for Byron or Dobson or somebody like that, but I wouldn't guarantee it though. So you might have to make some magic and make do with the Wallman CC kind of combo again, right? So anyway, you need to find a couple of top 4 defensemen at minimum. So let's just say that. You also are still looking for some help on wing, I think. Upgrades. You have good players in Tyler Toffoli. You have William Eklund there, but maybe you have Will Smith back there. We'll see. But I think you need a guy that, and I've said this before, you want a guy that you feel comfortable with. Okay, if Will Smith is ready to be your 2C, fine. We'll put this guy that we signed or traded for at wing, and he's going to be good there. So that could be your John Tavares. That could be your Mikhail Granlund. That could be a couple other guys that we talked about. Matthew Sheng, guys that have been played both comfortably over the years, right? You don't want to get like a winger who can only do that. You want a guy, I think you want to still try to add a guy that can do both in a top 6 capacity on a good team. Now the Sharks, he's going to be an amazing player because the Sharks won't be a playoff team. So I think that's sort of the need that you're looking for. For all these guys that we talk about, you want good room guys. You want, keep the vibes going, right? All that kind of good stuff, right? So that's important too. I think, let's say you do add that kind of that dream top 6 center winger. Really, the ideal guy. I'm not going to say Mikhail Granlund. The ideal guy you really wanted there was Logan Couture.
Pick somebody else.
Logan Couture. It really was supposed to be Logan Couture. So if you can find the kind of a guy who's like 90% as good as Logan Couture, like Granlund, maybe, I don't know, 90% is probably accurate. Or a guy like Tavares that can kind of fill in there, then I think that's okay. But that's kind of what you're looking for there. So then let's say you figure that out. And so now you have the option to move Will Smith back to wing if you need to, or you have a good winger to play with him in a John Tavares or whatever, right? So then at that point, then you are Celebrini, Smith / Tavares, and Wenberg up the middle. I like that. That's good. And then at fourth line center, then the fourth line center, you can find somebody. You can find, I think, Giles, Ostapchuk, maybe Beestead, right? These are all reasonable guys that can give you a good 8 minutes a night, maybe, right? And I think you could use another kind of middle 6 winger, a guy that can slide up and down between the third and second line, kind of like an upgrade on, kind of like what you hope Luke Cunningham was going to be, but didn't quite end up being, like a guy that you could trust for 15 goals a night, that you can play in the top 6 in a pinch and he won't hurt you, or he can be a complimentary guy there. Like he can kind of be like the worst player on a top 6 line, but help you because he's doing kind of the things that other guys aren't doing, or a guy that's a really solid third line guy, kind of like a guy that basically you can play with Wenberg.
Sure.
And so Wenberg is not the only skilled player on his line. And so then if you had a third line of, let's just say it's like Colin Graf, Wenberg, and this hypothetical free agent signing or trade, then you suddenly have, like, if Graf pops off next year, then you actually have a valid third line. And then you start to talk yourself into crazy things like, hey, this team is farther ahead in the development than we're talking about. So anyway, those are sort of the needs of the roster that I see that are sort of doable and fillable, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have more of a better idea in the off seasons. That's my answers. Once we start to get some holes filled and have some ideas, we'll have a better answer for you.
But to go back to Joseph and T Graveline or T Graveline's question, that some stupid money might be spent though to achieve these goals.
Might be. Yeah, for sure. So, especially short term.
Yeah. Contracts that you would never dream of giving 2 years ago, I guess is what I mean. So
Just Steve asks, which teams do the Sharks leapfrog next year? Because they've been last for 2 years.
Right. Let me look at the standings. One team that popped off to me is Nashville, because Nashville, unless you think that they're going upward, which I don't know if they are, I kind of don't think so. That
you'd have to get some new coaching in there and some new changes.
I don't think they're changing their coach though, right? So
I'm not sure if they are or not.
yeah,
but
I don't believe so.
Sometimes that's what kickstarts it.
You know, a team like Pittsburgh, obviously, right, is not a team that you see on the rise, right? Even if they try to do things to kind of hang around. You know, the Islanders are in a weird spot where they don't feel like they're going upwards. So what do they do with their big contracts? Do they start to kind of break it apart a little bit? Vancouver obviously has a ton of question marks in terms of is Pettersson any good? Really, I guess that's a question these days. If he's really worth EP 116, right, or EP 11.6, if he's worth that contract figure. Yes, I mean Seattle's a team that's made up of like a lot of decent players, but just not a lot of great players. And so if that doesn't happen for them, so anyway, those are some teams out there that I would throw out there. But let's see realistically though, because I don't really see obviously I don't see the Sharks making the playoffs. I think maybe they can leapfrog from last place, maybe like a handful of teams. So let's say it's Chicago, because Chicago doesn't get much better. Let's say it's Nashville, because Nashville keeps hitting the decline hits even harder. Vancouver smells like a big decline year, like Pettersson disappoints, and then Quinn Hughes pouts, and they trade him next year in the middle of next season for a huge package from New Jersey. Finally, yeah, that smells like one. The Islanders, right? Obviously with upheaval there too, right? Pittsburgh, because they can't figure out what they just can't find the guys. This is, of course, they're very much in the Sharks position from a couple of years ago, or from 5 years ago, at the end of the Sharks kind of golden age, or whatever you call it. And some other year it just depend on Detroit and Buffalo just not figuring it out. So, Boston, I kind of like. I have a good feeling about Boston kind of being better next year, because their core players, right? Yeah, are young enough and good enough. They're all in their late 20s, right? So, or earlier than that, from McAvoy to Pasternak and Swayman. So,
we're ready to move on.
Yep.
All right, Matthias 893 has one question for me, one question for you, Sheng.
Okay.
He asked me, what is my favorite book on the shelf behind me? A lot of these books are my wife's, my fiance's. I think the most apropos is the Return of the King on this side. I have I do love the Tolkien books, so I'm gonna go with Tolkien. But probably The Hobbit is my favorite Tolkien book.
That's my favorite one too. Yeah.
On the shelf.
Have you read past? I've only read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Have you read like this? What is it? The Cimmerian? Is that what it's called? I haven't read that one.
Cimmerian or whatever it is.
Cimmerian. Yeah. Have you read past?
I own it. It might be on this shelf. I have never read it.
Okay.
I do own it. Besides that, most of the reading is done by her and not by me. So there are medical textbooks here.
If there's one book on the island that you had to take here, what would it be? Desert Island. Your desert island.
I'm gonna go with the complete collection of Sherlock Holmes books.
Okay, that's a good call.
This is like Sherlock Holmes complete collection. Yeah, because then it's like you've got like 20 stories in one, so it's not like you just got like one story. Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
But most of these books are hers, so yeah, it's a nice bookshelf. There's also Roberto Luongo up there, which I found in a thrift shop for like $5.
Oh, is that like McFarlane figure?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a McFarlane figure. It says $14.95, but I got it for $5.
Nice. Okay. You're gonna pump that guy's tires.
I love the Roberto with the orca. It's just a classic look.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my bookshelf. Your question, Sheng.
My favorite basketball player.
Basketball player.
Yeah. And I'm a Lakers fan. Sorry, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe the Lakers blew a chance for Steph Curry, LeBron round 2. So silly, but it's gonna be a Laker player. And I grew up in the 80s, so grew up a fan. I had a good time for the Lakers. So my favorite player is gonna be Magic. I remember him getting announcing an HIV, and everyone thought that was like a death sentence back then, right? Everyone thought Magic was going to be dead in 2 years, and I was still a kid back then when he announced that. So, but still remember the great plays. I was a little older when Magic returned, much chubbier and less effective. But anyway, so it's got to be Magic. The other players like Shaq was a lot of fun. But Kobe was great, but Kobe is really tarnished in my mind with the rape allegation that he basically admitted to, more or less. I like Luka a lot. Luka's a lot of fun to watch. I do like LeBron. I'm not a Lakers fan that hates on LeBron. So anyway, a lot of great Lakers, but I'm gonna go with Magic. So it stays safe there. So.
All right. Finco had a very long question, which we have
Thoughts
distilled
on
down
Selen
to
Wallenius, basically.
basically like where is Leo Salen Wallenius going to
Yeah.
play next year, and what do we feel about him?
Right, and I think this is out there already, but I talked with Ofe Boden, and you guys know him. He's like the man for Swedish in terms of Swedish hockey, and we were DMing right after Wallenius signed his ELC, and so anyway, so Wallenius is a second round pick. So again, the SHL NHL agreement that you can't put those guys in the AHL basically, unless the basic of the agreement is like a guy like Beasted, right? You can have over here and put him in the AHL because he's a first round pick. But if it's not a first round pick, I think it's seen as okay. Why do you have him in a lower league? Why are you taking away this prospect from the SHL? And so Selen Wallenius, then the only way he can go to the AHL until he's 24 is if his team lets him go, his SHL team. And so my understanding is that Wallenius, and it's out there, is going to play for is it Vaxtro? Is that how you say it? Vaxtro? I don't know.
Yeah, Vaxtro, I think. I don't.
The Lakers, though. The Lakers. He's going to play for the Lakers. And anyway, so he's going to play with them next year. But what Ofe mentioned, and we've seen, like I said, a few examples, and I mentioned this, is that teams can't get around this SHL NHL agreement. I mean, there are ways to get around it, right? Basically, the SHL club has to agree to let this guy go if he's not a first round pick. And so this is where you start talking about. I mentioned this with Havlid, like that the team wants to take control of this player's development. And so with Selen Wallenius signing his ELC, maybe there's something where the Sharks are saying, okay, you stay in Sweden for 1 more year, but we're going to take over your development after this. And his team agreed to that, basically. One thing that Ofe did tell me, and I wasn't as familiar with this, is that he described Selen Wallenius' season as really messy, playing with a bunch of different teams, which I think is right? Didn't he play in Liga too this year? I think I saw that.
Yeah, he was all over the. I think he played in Liga as well.
Yeah, so I think this is a sense of like, okay, like we're gonna give you one more chance in Sweden, but yeah, don't fuck around with this guy, or we're gonna take him back next year. And there's a tacit agreement between the Lakers, the Vaxtro Lakers, and the Sharks that's gonna happen. So I'll be the guess. But we do know he's going to play in Sweden next year. And I think that the hope is that he finds some stability there next year. So
yeah, I think he can do it too. He's got some. I think he'll find a roster spot. It's just how much time he's going to get. Hopefully, but that's just
and I guess in terms of his development, obviously bouncing around all the teams he did this year, not a good thing. But he's still, I think, a pretty good prospect. Kind of leans more defensive, right? And a kind of a smaller guy though, so we'll see how it all works out. But anyway, just to give you a quick cap of all the teams I played with, a quick recap. He played for both the Lakers, SHL. I guess J20 is that like their highest junior league. He played for Allsvenskan for a team called Nybro. He also played in Liga for TPS. So that is a lot of teams.
Yeah, bounced all over the place.
Yeah.
Okay, James Barrett says, is there a specific like position or position grouping that has a valuable surplus in the Shark system that we can try?
We probably should add this with other questions. Yeah.
To get a specific asset like defenseman.
We know, right? We mentioned it. So especially in the prospect pool, Musty, Chernishaw, Haltonen, Lund, all those guys, right? And then of course the centers too. So
yeah, scoring winger and guys that haven't made it yet but have still some value. They have not diminished their value a ton from their draft year. So they do have some guys there. They probably will attempt to swing those guys for places they don't have, places of need. All right. R. Phillips 19 says, where would Misa and Schaefer be picked if they were in the?
This is a question for you. I'm gonna turn on the light for Mushu, so I'm gonna step away for a second.
Take a moment.
Yeah, literally, I'll be back in a moment. So go ahead.
It's interesting. The 23 draft was loaded, so Schaefer and Misa would be behind the top 4 probably. I think the Carlson, Fantilli, Bedard. I think once you get into the Smith territory, then you're starting to think about Schaefer. Because there wasn't a D in that draft that was super good. So I think maybe around that 4 spot for Schaefer. Maybe 3 if something else happened or a team needed a D. And then Misa right after that spot, probably after Michkov. But that's also dependent on teams' boards related to Michkov and Smith and all that. So for 23, I was just saying it's like I think the top 3 remain the same, and then Schaefer maybe 3, maybe 4, and then Misa after Smith and Michkov.
Okay, right. We actually answered this during our draft lottery live stream. You said that you had Misa. You think Misa will go behind Smith?
I think so, but it would be close. Okay. Be pretty close between the two. I think Misa has a little bit more size, so maybe teams would value that, but not a lot size, just a little. And then 24 draft, it's a little tougher. I mean, Celebrini goes 1, right? But I think I think Schaefer would beat out Levshinov for top defenseman, so he might go 2 if Chicago was looking for a D. And then Misa in that 3 to 4, 5 range, somewhere in there.
Okay. So you think a Levshinov could go ahead of Misa then?
Maybe. I honestly think Misa would probably go ahead of him. I think Levshinov was picked just because he was the best defenseman on the board. And it is what it is. It's just the way that it crumbled in that draft year. I think he would go ahead of like Caden Lindstrom and all of those guys.
Now, who was 3 in that draft? I forget. Lindstrom was 4, right?
Lindstrom was 4. I can't remember. It was only 1 draft ago. I should be able to remember. Beckett Seneca was 3. I think.
That's right. Okay.
And then
we're in that portion of the podcast. We're in that portion of Return of the King, the extended editions.
We're pretty far in. They're marching on Mount Doom right now in a futile attempt to distract Sauron from finding Frodo.
They gotta we've got to be almost done. Whenever they drop that fucker into Mount Doom, we've got to be almost done, all right?
We're almost. We only have like 7 questions left. I think we're gonna.
That's the whole point of the movie. So
I think we're gonna beat it. To be honest.
Yeah, I think so. Actually. Okay.
Our Phillips' second question was: have all successful rebuilds actually drafted their defensemen? And I think there's 2 ways to answer this. I guarantee you that all of the winning Stanley Cup teams have defensemen that they have drafted. Probably.
Well, I don't think that's the. I think it's more
that's not
like
the question.
We're asking about the linchpin guys, right? Like,
yes,
no one cares about your number 6 defenseman that you drafted, but.
So I don't think that's the case. I think teams can be built in many different ways and have been built in ways that do not require.
I mean, look, you can kind of like look this up like on your own, kind of in a sense of like look at all the Stanley Cup winners and their number 1 defensemen and how they acquire them, right? So like Florida is a very interesting case where it's probably not the most likely case where their number one defenseman is arguably Forsling or even Montour, right? And Forsling they picked up off of waivers. Montour, I don't remember, but they didn't. I think Montour was like one of those like 2-year, like $6 million signings or whatever. He was on the outs in I think Buffalo. He wasn't doing well there. So that's unusual case. You're not usually going to build your top defenseman. You're not going to get them off the scrap heap like that, but it can happen. So I actually do want to double check that with Montour. Yeah, Montour was signed to a 3-year, $10.5 million contract in 2021. So yeah, not a high end contract, not a waiver pickup, but still not a high end contract there. If you look at the year before Vegas, right? So Peter Angelo is our best defenseman, and that was obviously out of free agency. But then we go into Colorado, Tampa Bay, and then the Blues in 2019. And Peter Angelo was their draft pick, St. Louis, McCarr, Hedman, all draft picks, right? Washington was John Carlson. That was a draft pick too, but I think John Carlson was a late first rounder. So it doesn't always have to be like the number 1 pick or number 2, number 3 pick or whatever, right? The Penguins, they found Letang, but Letang was a 3rd rounder maybe or 2nd rounder. The Blackhawks, Duncan Keith, 2nd rounder. The Kings, 2014. We're back to that. Drew Doughty was a high pick. The Bruins, Zdeno Chara, we've talked about that, right? That was a free agency signing. So I guess if you look at that, and probably if you look back in the past too, you're going to conclude that the most likely way is to find him in a draft, but it's not the only way.
Yeah, and you're going to need to build the rest of it out too. I think we do that a lot where we think we need to build every piece through the draft, and you don't. You just need to build the right guys.
And also doesn't have to be a top 5 pick too.
True.
Like we mentioned Letang, we mentioned Duncan Keith.
Mark-Edouard Vlasic.
Well, no, yeah. If you find a Mark-Edouard Vlasic in the 2nd round, a guy that like for a decade is going to be your version of Jacob Slavin, then yeah, that's actually a good example. If Carolina wins the Stanley Cup this year, and if you consider Slavin to be their number 1 guy, Slavin was like a 3rd round pick or something, right? He definitely wasn't a 1st rounder or anything like that. Even if you go far back to like the Red Wings, their last Stanley Cup. And Nick Lidstrom is not the best example of this because he was drafted in a time where Swedish players maybe weren't drafted as high normally, but Lidstrom was a 3rd round pick a long time ago. And actually in that draft, a Swedish player did go number 1, Matt Sundin. So it wasn't like Sweden was ignored that year. So yeah. So I think again, the point is that like you don't need a tank forever and to get your guy. That's one of the points there. That I would make. So,
all right, Stephanie K. Asks, is Eklund the most valuable expendable trade piece? She loves Eklund. He's her favorite Shark. And to be honest, that's not inaccurate. He might be the most valuable expendable trade piece. Expendable is not the right word, though. I think they still don't have enough Eklunds in their system to.
Yeah, expendable is maybe not the right word, but I guess like if you consider Macklin untouchable, you consider Askarov untouchable. Maybe not untouchable, but like you need that guy at that position, right? So if you do trade Askarov, you need to have a goalie solution somewhere else. You consider a defenseman like Dickinson or Mikko Medulin to be, you want to more likely keep him because again, you don't want to take from one hand, rob one hand to feed the other. So then it's like Eklund, and then we talk about Chernyshov and Musty too. I will say one thing that's going to be a little controversial, but like I think Will Smith could find himself in that place a couple of years from now. Maybe not right now, but like we'll see if Will Smith defines himself as like your Patrick Kane, even Clayton Keller type at least, right? Where he's going to be more offensive leaning, but he produces so much offense that you kind of don't worry about the other stuff. And that could be a really deadly pairing with Macklin Celebrini. But if he tops out as more 60, 70 point guy, like you mentioned, like Dylan Strome as sort of a flourish kind of comp for Will Smith, that's expendable. If he's not the Dylan Strome that we see now, maybe, but like the Dylan Strome from a couple years ago, where it's like there's a lot of scoring, but it's like it's to some degree empty calorie-ish.
Yeah.
Calorie-ish. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen with Will, but I would say that I'm interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, there could be a reality where that's the case, but I think it's gonna be 3 or 4 years before we get there.
Yeah, it'll be a couple years from now. So to answer the exact question, yeah, I do think Eklund probably is the most valuable trade piece that is, let's just say the most conceivable player that they might trade, I guess. Right? Most valuable conceivable player. Like I can conceive them of trading Mukumadulin, and I think Eklund is more valuable than Mukumadulin, but because because Mukumadulin's a defenseman too, I think it's a little less likely. Anyway, it's a little less likely, but so I think to answer your question, Stephanie, yes, I think Eklund might be. I want to add something to your question though, that really interests me is how the Sharks treat Eklund this summer. Like, do they treat him? Eklund is eligible for an extension on July 1st. He's got one more year left in his contract, but he can sign for extension. Just to give you an example of a surefire guy that there's no doubts that you're going to give the 8 years to was Connor McDavid. And when Connor McDavid became eligible for a similar extension, that Edmonton signed him the first day, I think July 1st, for like 8 years, $100 million. And I'm not saying that you're comparing Eklund to Connor McDavid in any kind of sense, but I wonder if they give him that kind of treatment. I expect actually that they will give Macklin that kind of treatment when the same situation arises next summer. I don't know. We don't know what Macklin's going to do next year, but I would guess that's what happens there. So I'm really curious with Eklund if this is like a fight for a contract. If they're like, no, here is 8 years and I mean, not $100 million, but here's 8 years and 56 million, 8 years, $60 million. We love you. We want you here. Or if it's like, you have some points here, but we're not sure if we're going to win with you. I think that is a real question. And so I wonder how that's going to trend. I know that's going to be deeply unpopular to say that to allude to that with Will Smith in a couple years from now and to say that about William Eklund, but I think that's the reality of like the truth of where the Sharks are, that like you can see Macklin being a playoff. You win the Stanley Cup with him. Askarof's a goalie. So like, okay, like you can see like he has the potential to be a elite guy. Shesterkin, a Hellebuck, right? If everything works out for Askarov. Everybody else, I don't know. And that includes Will Smith. That includes Sam Dickinson. That includes William Eklund. There's a lot of talent there, but like, I don't know if this guy is going to be, if any of these guys is going to be your Victor Hedman, your linchpin number one defenseman for a decade. If any of these guys is going to be your Nikita Kucherov, your linchpin scoring winger, or Patrick Kane, your linchpin scoring winger. So yeah, I think that's like, if you look at the Sharks in the most real way, I think that's the reality of the roster. So.
All right, we have 5 questions left. They are trying to scale Mountain Doom as we speak, so we got to hurry this up.
All right. Well, we got out of like the first 50 here, so
yeah, we have 5 questions.
And we haven't actually reached like the how do you say it? One of the the endings of the movie. Like the movie probably should have ended arguably when Frodo woke up with the elves after he dropped the ring or dropped a golem in there and the eagles came to save him. You could have ended the movie right when he woke up, basically around there. But anyway, go on though. Let's not
we're getting there. Kyle J asks, where would Sam Dickinson be ranked or drafted in this year's draft?
Another Keegan question. I'm going to drink some water.
I think he would honestly probably be around number like 4. Like, I think that because of this year's draft, the defenseman is Schaefer and then a bunch of question marks, that Dickinson projects at such a higher level than guys like Merca or not projects, but like has a higher chance of reaching the top 4 potential than Merca and Jackson Smith that I think a team would reach for them in the top 5. I think Dickinson would go top 5. I think a guy like Z Bouillon would probably also maybe go top 5, but it depends. Teams would still have question marks about his size, so. But he would, because there's just not a lot of defensemen beyond Schaefer, and teams love to draft D. Even if they don't, like, even if there's a good forward available, D still end up going higher in the draft than you think they do.
Right.
So
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. So he's debatably the second best defenseman of this draft class then.
I think he would be. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah. Chaz Marshall says, assuming
the
Misa
Final Four. All right.
Huh? Final Four.
Yeah, Final Four. Okay.
Assuming Misa's the pick, who do you think moves to wing, him or William Smithium?
Smith.
You think Smith?
I've always said, I mean, I think from the beginning when they drafted Smith, like, I wondered if he moved to wing eventually. So, yeah. So
yeah. I think he did well enough at wing to convince me that he could do wing. I was worried that because he played center for so long and his game is very stretch the ice, very playmaker kind of thing, and he doesn't have a lot of board battling to him, that if you might struggle at wing, but he did okay. So I think he would do all right at wing. But either one, they might give the preference to Smith in the beginning just because he's older. So,
I mean, what do you think? Do you think Smith ends up as a wing? Like your prediction?
I
still think he ends up as center, but I just think that there's more of a debate there than people think, I guess, is what I would say.
I think he switches. I think it's one of those like Draisaitl, McDavid
back
things.
And forth. Okay. How about Misa?
I think he comes in and out of the center/winger position.
Misa?
But I think his primary would probably be center.
Okay. Misa. Okay.
Sorry, I'm talking about Smith.
Oh, sorry. Okay. How about Misa?
Misa seems like more of a center overall. His game seems more suited to being a center.
I feel like Macklin's going to be one of those guys where it's like an insult that he's on wing. Like, well, you're not going to put him on wing. Like, he's on wing right now, but it's because he's with like Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's. But like 5 years from now, it'll be like you're never going to take Macklin off a center.
No, he's going to be a center forever.
Yeah. So
that's going to be his job. But yeah, the other guys, it's a little bit of a question mark. Chaz Marshall also wants to ask NCAA or NHL for Misa, assuming he doesn't go back to the OHL, which is still a possibility, I think. Unless he signed in the NCAA and I didn't hear about it.
What kind of NLI money could Misa get? Like, can't he like go with his brother? Didn't his brother sign with Penn State? So
yeah, you can go play with him.
Yeah, actually, I wonder why the rumors about Porter Martone. Why don't you try to get Michael Misa to come over instead of Martone to Penn State? But anyway, I would guess that keeping him in a level that's not the NHL is going to be better for him. So I think Macklin is exceptional. I do hear what you said earlier that Misa might be able to survive in the NHL, but I mean, even with like Will Smith did it, but Will Smith, they gave him another year in college. And also too, they were in the Will Smith had the leverage where he was like, if you don't put me in the NHL, like who knows what's going to happen, you know, as an NCAA free agent, right? And so this coming year, Michael Misa doesn't have that leverage. He may have it after a year in the NCAA, but doesn't have it yet. So I would say that for sure you put him down in a lower level and not expect him to come into the NHL and do much of anything for you. So
yeah, I think just the way the Sharks have done with under Grier, I think it makes sense that he would go back to a lower level.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. Anthony says, this is slightly different. Are we trading up from the Dallas pick to grab a D in this draft?
Yeah, that's interesting shade to the question. So okay, gotta look back on this to make sure. But so the last 4 picks are the conference finals, right? I remember looking this up for the Timo Meier stuff. So that are automatically the conference finalists, right? So
yep.
Okay, so I think Dallas will beat Winnipeg. They're up 2-1 in this series right now. So that's like going to be 29-32 then.
Pretty much.
And So yeah, I mean, can that get you? Can it be a centerpiece for? I don't know. Centerpiece may not be the right word. It might have to be like you trade a Dallas pick. It can be one of the centerpieces, but then you add a good prospect or you add a second round pick, and then maybe you can land at the low end like a Nemec or something like that. I don't know. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that I think there could be guys in the middle of the first that are available.
Right.
Ethan
That's what you
Atkinson,
mentioned, right? Yeah.
Jackson Smith, Radamerka maybe, Cameron Reed possibly. That could be available that you might consider in that range.
Let's look at the. I want to look at the Puck Perry calculator right now. I'm interested in it. So let's say you trade the. Let's say it's the 29th. Oh, it's a Dallas pick. Sorry. And let's say that pick is. Let's just worst case scenario. It's 32. And you trade it to who's got a 15 pick?
15 is
or Calgary. Calgary is like 16, right?
Yeah, Calgary 16, Vancouver is 15. Although Montreal has Calgary's pick. So.
Oh, Montreal has it. Okay, so let's say, well, Montreal has a lot of defensemen, right? So let's just say they don't want a defenseman. So let's just say Montreal,
Yeah,
then,
so
and
like
they have
28 and
the Calgary pick, and let's say that's
35,
16,
33,
and
4.
yeah, so you're trying to trade 32 for 16, and the value right now is the 32 pick is 10.4 on the Perry pick value, and the Calgary pick 16 is 23.5. So you basically need to add another late first rounder to even be close, like we're to talk about it. So that might be the Edmonton pick next year, then, right? So, or that's a crapshoot a little bit. So.
Well, we talked about it. It's like the Sharks traded 11 for 27, 34, and 45, right?
Right. 11. So let's say, well, Dallas is probably going to be 29 to 32. So that's a small shade of difference. But the Sharks do have 33. And whose second round pick do they have? The other one this year's a Colorado.
I think they have Colorado's.
Let me double check.
They have currently slated as 53.
Okay. It's close. You might add a little more, but like, yeah, that's not quite 11, 27, 45, but I'm sorry, it's not quite 27, 34, and 45, but
it's also not the quantity team that or quantity draft that you're looking for. So
yeah. And yeah, 15 is lower than 11, I guess, if that's your 16, if that's your target. But yeah, as you mentioned, though, it's not a quantity draft, so yeah, so teams may not be looking for that. Oh, it's Ottawa actually that they have the Ottawa pick, which is going to be a little lower, but
Gollum has fallen off of
oh man,
Doom
okay. Well, we're almost there. We're almost there. So yeah.
So
well, where's the Ottawa pick projected then?
53.
Oh, 53. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it's 33 and 53 is what they're projected for the second round.
Okay.
So it's close, but
close.
We'll see.
Yeah. So okay, you could see it. But like you mentioned, I think teams kind of know it's not a quantity draft, so they might be a little more reluctant to do that. So
our last question. Take a deep breath, everybody.
Yeah.
Sean Abuzalef says, "Can the Sharks sign Zetterlund to an offer sheet, even though they just traded him?"
Yes.
Yeah. They
yes.
can?
I checked with an agent. They absolutely can, but the question is why. So offer sheet is basically if the range that you're probably looking at for a Zetterlund is 2.3 to 4.6, and you have to trade a 2026 second round pick. So if you give Zetterlund a contract in that area, you have to basically trade the 33 pick for him. Or not that's the 20. I'm sorry, not the 33 pick. That's
just next year.
But you're trading the pick that might be the 33, a high second round pick for him. So is that worth it to you? Maybe it is. Obviously, he didn't do much. He wasn't as productive in Ottawa as you'd like, and I know he did the same thing with the Sharks when he first came over. So maybe next year he finds his game. I think with Ottawa too, it's really interesting. I was talking with the agent, not Zetterlund's agent, but just what are they going to do with Zetterlund? because he definitely didn't add to his value with what he did in Ottawa. I know it's not all about points, but I think in 20 games, regular season games, I think he had 3 goals and 2 assists. And in the playoffs, in 6 games, he went pointless. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I mean, of course they'll qualify him, and I guess, but like, what is he at 2 million? Yeah, I think they would, but still, though, it's one of those things where I think they probably will keep him for another year to kind of see, like, hey, did we make a mistake with this guy, or let's give him a chance, because it's kind of rough to move him so quickly. But I think it is a question mark, though, in terms
It's
of what
interesting.
exactly they're going to do, right? Yeah, like, if they were a little more cutthroat, they might move on from him. But I think that they obviously gave up an okay package, not an overwhelming package for him in the second rounder and those top checks. So they're not going to just like cut him loose, I think. But
yeah, you're
yeah,
getting a top check for free and then having to pay Zetterlund for it.
if that were to happen, yeah, like if they let Zetterlund go and just sign Zetterlund as a free agent, right? that'd be fun.
It'd be very
But
wild.
it's
Yeah,
just unlikely, because I think just for the save face thing, and really just to give a guy, not even the save face thing, but just to give a guy like a full year to really
yeah,
figure out if he's a player or not. But I can see them, if Zetterlund doesn't figure it out by next year, they can be like, "Ooh, we made a mistake here." So,
yeah.
that could be like a shorter term contract basically for Zetterlund, where before with the Sharks, he might have been looking at 3-4 years or whatever, right? And or a bridge contract, but a decent amount, because he was productive and the vibes were good with him. He was well liked in the room and all that good stuff, right? But with Ottawa, though, higher expectations, playoff team, I'm sure they still like him because they did trade a decent package for him. But like, how does his kind of subpar regular season playoff showing, how does that affect his contract? Is
Yeah,
going to
for
be an
sure.
interesting
It's going to
question.
be a
Yeah.
question. I think he's not going to get as much money as he's looking for.
Yeah, definitely not what the Sharks probably were gonna kind of offer him. So, which I talked about in the
I
story.
don't
So.
think that Grier is going to retread in that direction. That's just the way that it seems.
I don't think he's gonna offer cheat him for sure. Like, I don't think
No.
he likes him that much. I think I could see, like, if Ottawa is crazy and just cuts him, like, yeah, sure, then
Sure.
he can sign him back, and he can fill a role and
We
whatnot.
are at one of the endings so far. They're sitting on the rock, staring at all the.
Oh man, we passed the first ending
Not yet. The
where
first
Frodo
ending
woke
hasn't
up.
happened yet. They're just sitting on
Oh,
the rock.
are they waiting for the Eagles to come save them? Is that
Yeah,
where
they're
they're
kind of
at?
just talking about the end of the world
Oh, okay,
to each other.
okay, okay.
That's one of the first endings.
Well, that one would be a weird ending, I would say. I think the first one that made sense to me is the next scene when
Yeah, the Eagles coming or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he wakes up to his boys. So,
Yes.
but anyway, yeah, so
That's
not
it.
likely, but there is no rule barring the Sharks from doing that. Just
Mhm.
a reminder that if the Sharks were to offer sheet Zetterlund at a lower amount, 1.5 to 2.3, basically, that they would need to trade back for their 2026 third to do so, though.
Do you want to say a quick word to the people who could not be featured?
Oh, geez. Thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot. Yes. And a couple of the guys, I couldn't find the subscriber information, but you guys have, like, I know the names. You guys have subscribed for a long time, so maybe just something didn't renew, or maybe the site's gone downhill. I hope not, but let me find. Hold on. Where is the doc? Here's the StreamYard. Oh, here's the doc, and okay. Okay. So, okay. So here's a little announcement, and we'll talk more about this later on. But Austin SJ had a question for me. But Austin actually is a writer editor on the website, and I'll talk more about his role. He's also going to help with moderating the comments on the website a little bit. And I don't know why he asked the question, because he literally can just text me. So, and we have a 4-hour podcast. So that probably is more efficient. Steven Stoker asked the question about weaponizing cap space, and I couldn't find your membership info. So Steven, just send me this for anybody on this list here. Just send me the email that you use or whatever. That's why I ask in the call, the mailbag questions. If you can let me know the email that the email that you use as a member of San Jose Hockey Now, so it's easy for me to look up to backtrack. So anyway, he asked a question about weaponizing cap space. Good question, but anyway, Jeff asked the question about. Another question about the number 2 pick, basically, and how actually maybe the number 2 pick was good for the Sharks because Misa's going to be so good, maybe. And so, Jeff, again, email me at shengpeng@gmail.com or at, I think it is it SJ Hockey Now or San Jose Hockey Now? SJ Hockey Now at gmail.com. So either of those places will work. More likely, I'll answer at my email, though, shengpeng@gmail.com. And again, show me your membership email, and I will answer your question personally or on the next episode. Andy asked a question, actually a good one, about America and Jackson Smith. And sorry, my sniffles are getting worse at the end of this. So, but watching the end of Return of the King. But anyway, I need proof of your membership. So again, shengpeng@gmail.com, sjhockey@gmail.com. George, who has been a long-time subscriber, so not sure why I couldn't find your email. Same question. Actually, it was what would you trade to move up to number 1? Okay, so we did actually kind of answer your question anyway, but nonetheless, though, bonus question, even another question for me, George. Hit me up at those 2 places. So
cool.
Everybody else?
I think that's it.
We have done it at 3:45. So
yeah,
3:44.
Frodo has met his boys in Rivendell. Oh God,
okay.
I got to He met his boys in Rivendell, and now there's 40 minutes of other endings that are happening right now.
But Bilbo hasn't asked to see the ring again, which is kind of
I don't think so.
A dark moment. So good. So we beat the extended edition of Return of the King, but we would not have beat the theatrical version that ran 3:21 and was still too long, in my opinion. But
we would not have beat the regular edition.
Yeah.
But we did beat most of the endings of the extended. So all right, everybody. It's been a long night. I hope you had a fantastic week and have a good week next time. It's been fun. We will see you next time.
Don't be sad that don't be sad that it's over. Be sad. Don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that we experienced this together.
There it is. Perfect. All right. Bye, everybody.